The smoke still hung thick in the air when they found her. Nari knelt beside a wounded civilian, her hands red with blood that wasn't her own. The evacuation ships had left 10 minutes ago. She could have been on one of them. She should have been on one of them. But when the child started crying, clutching her mother's body, Nari couldn't leave. The heavy footsteps came from behind. She didn't turn around. There was no point. She knew what was coming. Stand up, human. The voice was deep, like rocks grinding together. It spoke in broken but understandable English, filtered through a translator device. Nari finished tying the bandage on the child's arm before she stood. She turned slowly and looked up. And up. The Kraith soldier towered over her. Easily. 8 feet tall. His scales were dark green, almost black, and covered in what looked like natural armor plating. His eyes were golden with vertical slits, and his mouth was full of teeth that could tear through metal. "You are a prisoner of the Kraith Empire," the soldier said. "Resistance will result in immediate death." Nari said nothing. She just nodded. The child behind her whimpered. "The young one?" the soldier asked, tilting his head. "She's hurt. She needs medical care," Nari said quietly. The soldier made a sound that might have been laughter. "Humans. Always protecting the weak. This is why you lose." He gestured with his massive clawed hand. "Take the female. Leave the spawn." 2 more Kraith soldiers stepped forward. They grabbed Nari's arms, lifting her off the ground like she weighed nothing. She didn't struggle. Struggling would only make things worse. As they carried her away, she heard the child crying behind her. It was the last sound of home she would hear. The Kraith flagship was enormous. Nari had seen it from the ground during the bombing, a dark shape that blotted out the sun. Now she was inside it, being dragged through corridors of black metal and red lighting. The air was hot and dry, much hotter than what humans found comfortable. She was already sweating. They threw her into a room. Not a cell, exactly, but close. The room had a bench, a water dispenser, and a waste facility. The walls were the same black metal as the corridors. One wall was transparent, looking out into a hallway. An energy barrier hummed across the opening. She could see out. They could see in. Nari sat on the bench and tried to think. She was alive. That was something. But she was also captured, on an enemy warship, surrounded by creatures that saw humans as nothing more than weak prey animals. The Kraith had been at war with humanity for 3 years now. In that time, they had won every major battle. Human weapons barely scratched their scales. Human tactics failed against their predatory instincts. Humanity was losing. Badly. She thought about her brother, Hyun. He had died in the first invasion, on the colony where they grew up. She hadn't been there. She had been studying medicine on Earth. By the time she got the message, he was already gone. She joined the military medical corps the next day. If she couldn't save Hyun, maybe she could save someone else. Hours passed. Or maybe days. It was hard to tell without windows or a clock. Kraith soldiers walked past her cell occasionally, looking at her with curiosity or contempt. Some tapped on the barrier, making her flinch. They seemed to find that funny. Eventually, a different Kraith came. This one was bigger than the others, with dark crimson scales that looked almost black in the red lighting. Scars covered his arms and chest. He wore what looked like a military uniform, black fabric marked with silver symbols. When he approached, the other soldiers immediately stepped back and lowered their heads. The energy barrier dropped with a hiss. The Crimson Kraith stepped inside. The barrier went back up behind him. "I am General Vekros," he said. His voice was different from the soldiers, deeper and clearer. His English was better too. "Commander of the 4th Fleet. You are on my ship." Nari stood up. Even standing, the top of her head barely reached his chest. She met his golden eyes anyway. "I am Nari," she said. Combat medic, human colonial defense. A healer, Vekros said. He walked around her slowly, studying her like she was an interesting insect. Why did you stay behind? Your people abandoned you. They didn't abandon me. I chose to stay. People were hurt. Weak people. Dying people. You could not save them. I had to try. Vekros stopped in front of her. He leaned down until his face was level with hers. His breath was hot and smelled like sulfur. This is why humans fail. You waste resources on the weak. Nature demands strength. The weak should die so the strong can thrive. Nari's hands clenched into fists. And is that why your people are winning? Because you let your weak die? For a moment, she thought he might kill her right there. His hand moved to the blade at his belt. But then, he made that grinding sound again. That might be laughter. Brave, he said. Foolish, but brave. You will answer questions about human military positions, weapons, defenses. I won't tell you anything that will get people killed. Then you will die. Then I'll die. Vekros stared at her for a long moment. Then, he turned and walked to the barrier. It dropped for him, then rose again, after he stepped through. We will speak again, human Nari, he said. Perhaps you will be wiser then. He walked away, and Nari was alone again. That night, she heard the sounds. High-pitched, chirping, almost like bird calls, coming from somewhere nearby. They sounded distressed, lonely. They went on for hours, before finally stopping. Nari lay on the hard bench and stared at the ceiling, wondering what kind of creature made sounds like that. Wondering if she would ever see the sky again. 3 days passed in the cell. Nari marked time by the meals they brought her. A gray paste that tasted like metal, but kept her alive. General Vekros came twice more to question her. Both times, she told him nothing useful. Both times, he left without killing her. She didn't understand why. The chirping sounds continued every night. Sometimes loud, sometimes soft, but always there, always sad. Nari started talking to herself just to have something to do, and one night, without thinking about it, she started humming. It was an old song her mother used to sing, a lullaby she had sung to Hyun when he had nightmares. The chirping stopped. Nari stopped humming, listening. Nothing. Then, very softly, the chirping started again, but different this time. Quieter. Almost curious. She started humming again. The chirping continued, like it was trying to match her tune. This became her routine. During the day, she exercised, slept, and watched the Kraith soldiers walk past. At night, she hummed, and the unseen creature chirped back. On the 7th day, everything changed. It was late, or what she thought of as late. The corridor outside her cell was empty. Most of the crew seemed to sleep during this period. Nari was lying on her bench, staring at the ceiling, when she heard something different. Not chirping. Clicking. Like claws on metal. She sat up slowly. 2 small shapes appeared in the corridor. At first, in the dim red light, she thought they were some kind of animal. Then she realized they were Kraith. Baby Kraith. Cubs. They were about the size of large dogs, maybe 3 feet long from nose to tail. Their scales were golden, not dark like the adults, and they didn't have the heavy armor plating yet. Their eyes were huge in their small faces, bright yellow and curious. They walked on 4 legs, though their front legs looked like they could be used as arms. The cubs stopped in front of her cell. They tilted their heads, looking at her. One of them chirped, the sound she had been hearing every night. "Hello," Nari whispered. Both cubs jumped back, startled. Then they crept forward again. Fascinated. The energy barrier hummed between them. It should have kept them out. But one of the cubs pressed against it with a small paw, and Nari saw the barrier flicker. Malfunction. There was a gap at the bottom, maybe from a power fluctuation. The first cub squeezed through the gap. The second followed. Nari's heart pounded. If anyone saw this, she was dead. They would think she had lured them somehow, stolen them. But the cubs didn't seem afraid. They walked right up to her bench, looking up at her with those enormous eyes. The first cub chirped again. It sounded like a question. Nari slowly lowered her hand. The cub sniffed it, then rubbed its head against her palm. Its scales were warm and surprisingly soft. The second cub did the same. "Where did you two come from?" Nari whispered. The cubs looked thin. She could see their ribs through their scales. Their eyes were dull. They moved like they were tired, like every step took effort. These weren't healthy babies. Her medical instincts took over. She checked them carefully, gently feeling their bodies. They let her, making small chirping sounds. No injuries she could see, but definitely malnourished. Dehydrated too, maybe. One of the cubs climbed onto the bench beside her. The other followed. They pressed against her, seeking warmth. Nari carefully put her arms around them. They were small enough that she could hold both of them. She started humming again. The same lullaby. The cubs made soft, contented sounds. Their bodies relaxed. Within minutes, they were both asleep, curled up on her chest. Their breathing was slow and steady. Warmer now. Safer. Nari didn't dare move. She just sat there, holding two baby aliens, and wondered what would happen when morning came. Morning came with shouting. "Security alert! The General's cubs are missing. All units. Begin. Search. Immediately." The voice blasted through speakers in the corridor. Nari's eyes snapped open. The cubs were still asleep on her chest, purring softly. Through the barrier, she could see soldiers running past. Weapons drawn. Check every section. Seal all exits. Someone has taken them. The cubs stirred, making worried chirps. Nari gently stroked their heads. "Shh. It's okay. It's okay." But it wasn't okay. These were General Vekros's children. She was holding the enemy commander's children. They would think she kidnapped them. They would kill her. More soldiers ran past. Some stopped to look at her, then kept running. They were searching other areas first. But eventually, someone would think to check her cell. The cubs buried their faces against her, frightened by all the noise. Nari held them tighter. Whatever happened, she wouldn't let anyone hurt them. They were just babies. Heavy footsteps approached, many of them. General Vekros stood outside her cell. Behind him were at least a dozen soldiers, all with weapons pointed at her. Another Kraith stood beside Vekros, almost as large, with dark blue scales and cold eyes. He looked furious. "I knew it," the blue Kraith snarled. "Wait," Vekros said quietly. His eyes were fixed on the cubs sleeping against Nari's chest. "General, she has stolen your offspring. This is an act of war. Execute her immediately." But Vekros wasn't listening. He was staring at his cubs, at how peacefully they slept, at how healthy they looked, better than they had looked in weeks, at how they clung to the human girl like she was their mother. "Drop the barrier," Vekros said. "General, drop it. Now." The barrier fell. Soldiers rushed in, reaching for the cubs. The cubs woke up. They saw the soldiers and hissed, a sound Nari had never heard them make. They pressed harder against her, claws digging into her clothes, refusing to leave. "Stand down," Vekros ordered. The soldiers stopped, confused. Vekros stepped into the cell. He moved slowly, carefully. When he reached Nari, he looked down at her. His expression was impossible to read. "What did you do to them?" he asked. Nari's voice shook. "Nothing. They came to me. I held them. They seemed scared. They have not slept peacefully in 30 days, Vekros said quietly. They refuse food. They waste away. The medical officers say they will die within a month. And now, I find them here. With you. Sleeping. Content. He reached down slowly. The cubs watched him but didn't hiss. He touched one gently, and it chirped softly. His hand was shaking. "What did you do?" he asked again. And this time his voice was different. Not angry. Desperate. "I sang to them," Nari said. "I held them, that's all." The blue Kraith Commander Thex stepped forward. "General, this is madness. The human is manipulating you. Using your offspring to gain favor. She is a prisoner," Vekros said, still looking at his cubs. "How would she even know I had offspring? How would she know where they were kept?" She could have. Enough." Vekros's voice went hard. He straightened up and looked at his second in command. "Clear the corridor. Everyone out. General, I must protest. Out. Now." Thex's jaw clenched. He looked at Nari with pure hatred, then turned sharply and gestured to the soldiers. They filed out. Reluctant. Thex was the last to leave, pausing at the barrier. "This will be reported to the High Council," he said, coldly. "Report whatever you wish," Vekros replied. The barrier went back up. Vekros and Nari were alone, except for the two cubs, still clinging to her. Vekros sat down heavily on the floor across from her. For a moment, the mighty general looked tired, old, scared. "Their names are Rin and Kale," he said quietly. "They are 3 cycles old. In your measurements, perhaps 2 of your years." Nari looked down at the cubs. "Rin and Kale. They're beautiful. They are dying." Vekros's voice cracked slightly. "All across the Empire, cubs are dying. The strongest species in the galaxy cannot keep our children alive. We do not know why. The medical officers give them nutrients, monitor their health, everything by procedure. But they waste away. Mine were among the healthiest. Now look at them." Nari studied the cubs more carefully. They were definitely too thin. Their scales were dull. But right now, pressed against her, they looked peaceful, content. Their breathing was steady. "How are they normally cared for?" she asked. Vekros looked at her strangely, like the question was odd. "In nurseries. Isolated. With temperature control. Automated feeding systems. Medical monitoring. Everything they need." "Isolated?" Nari repeated. "They're alone? Of course. It is how we raise warriors. From birth, they must learn to be strong, self-sufficient, dependent on no one. Weakness is not tolerated. They're babies," Nari said softly. "They are Kraith. They're babies," Nari said again, firmer. "They need more than food and temperature control. They need touch, comfort, someone to hold them." Vekros stared at her. "That is soft, weak. It makes them dependent. It makes them healthy." Nari stroked Rin's head. The cub purred and nuzzled closer. "Look at them. When was the last time they looked this peaceful?" Vekros didn't answer. He just watched his children, and something in his expression shifted. Pain, realization, grief. "Our ways have served us for 1,000 generations," he said quietly. "We are the strongest species in known space. Our warriors are unmatched. Our empire spans 100 systems. How can our ways be wrong?" "Maybe they're not wrong for warriors," Nari said. "But they might be wrong for cubs." Silence filled the cell. Outside, Nari could hear distant voices. Soldiers talking. The ship's engines hummed through the walls. But in this small space, it was quiet. "I cannot show weakness," Vekros finally said. "If the High Council learns I have allowed a human prisoner to..." to care for my offspring, I will be removed from command, possibly executed for treason. The Kraith do not tolerate deviation from tradition. Then your cubs will die, Nari said simply. Because I don't think they're going to survive in that nursery, no matter how perfect the temperature is. Vekros's hands clenched into fists. His claws scraped against the metal floor. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, he looked up at her. If I allowed you to continue caring for them, he said slowly. Would you? Nari blinked. I am asking if you would help my cubs survive. In exchange, I would improve conditions for all human prisoners on this ship. Better food, more space, medical care. You're asking me to help raise the children of the general who is trying to destroy my species? Yes. Nari looked down at Rin and Kale. They were watching her with those huge yellow eyes, trusting and innocent. They didn't understand war. They didn't understand empires or enemies, or any of it. They were just two scared babies who needed someone to care about them. I need help, she said. There's another prisoner here. Jiwan. She's a scientist, studies alien biology. If we're going to do this, I need her expertise. Vekros considered this. You would trust another human with this information? Would you trust me alone with your children? Another long silence. Then Vekros stood up. I will have her brought here. But understand this, human Nari. If this fails, if my cubs die, I will hold you responsible. And if word of this arrangement reaches the wrong ears, we will all be executed. The only reason I am taking this risk is because I have already lost everything else. He moved to the barrier. Before it dropped, he looked back at his cubs one more time. They had fallen asleep again, curled against Nari's chest. They have not looked that peaceful since they hatched, he said quietly. Then he was gone. Nari sat in the cell, holding two alien babies, and wondered what she had just agreed to. An hour later, the barrier dropped again. Two guards brought in another human. She was older than Nari, maybe 40, with short black hair and sharp eyes. She looked confused and frightened until she saw Nari. Then, she looked shocked. Nari, what are you? She stopped when she saw the cubs. Oh my stars. What are those? Jiwan, I need your help. The guards left, raising the barrier behind them. Jiwan approached slowly, staring at the sleeping cubs. Are those Kraith? Baby Kraith? Yes. And they're dying. All of them. Across their whole empire. I need you to figure out why. So, Jiwan crouched down, examining the cubs carefully without touching them. Her scientific mind clearly took over. What are the symptoms? How are they being raised? What interventions have been tried? No, Nari told her everything Vekros had said. As she talked, Jiwan's expression changed from confusion to surprise, to something like understanding. Oh no, Jiwan said softly. Oh, this is bad. What? I need to access their medical databases. I need to see historical records. But if I'm right... Jiwan looked at Nari seriously. If I'm right, the Kraith are killing their own children with their culture. General Vekros returned at dawn with a portable data terminal. He placed it on the floor without a word, then stood at the barrier watching his cubs. Rin and Kale were awake now, playing with Nari's fingers. They looked brighter, more alert. In just one night, the change was visible. Access code is 739 Black 4, Vekros said. You have full medical database privileges. Do not abuse this. Jiwan grabbed the terminal immediately, her fingers flying over the interface. Why? Vekros asked. Because I have a theory, Jiwan said, not looking up. And if I'm right, this goes back much further than you think. For the next 6 hours, Jiwan worked. Nari fed the cubs small pieces of the nutrition bars from her rations. They ate eagerly, more than they had apparently eaten in days. She kept them warm, held them, sang to them. They followed her around the small cell like ducklings. Vekros came and went, always stopping to watch his children. Each time, his expression grew more conflicted. Finally, Jiwan looked up. Her face was pale. I need to speak with your eldest medical advisors. Anyone who knows the old histories. Why? Vekros demanded. Because the Kraith weren't always like this? Jiwan said quietly. You weren't always isolated warriors. That's not your nature. You made yourselves this way, and it's destroying you. Vekros's scales darkened. You speak nonsense. We have always been the apex predators. The strongest. The dying, Jiwan interrupted. Your birth rates have been dropping for 300 years. I found it in your own records. Fewer cubs born each generation. Higher mortality rates. You thought it was environmental factors, diseases, anything but the truth. And what truth is that? Vekros's voice was dangerous. That you're social creatures who have been living in isolation for so long, you forgot what you are. The barrier dropped. Vekros stepped inside, towering over Jiwan. Explain. Now, Jiwan stood her ground, though Nari could see her hands shaking. Your oldest records, the ones from before your empire began, they describe Kraith living in clan groups. Multiple families together, cubs raised communally by many adults, not in isolation. Physical contact, group bonding, shared care. Does any of this sound familiar? Quote, old superstitions. We evolved beyond such primitive. You didn't evolve beyond it. You can't evolve beyond your own biology in just a few thousand years. You suppressed it, trained it out of yourselves, built a culture that denied your fundamental needs. And for adults, it works well enough. You're strong. You survive. But cubs? Jiwan gestured to Rin and Kale. Cubs need what you've forbidden. They need touch, warmth, social bonding. Without it, they fail to thrive. Their immune systems weaken. They stop eating. They waste away. This is human weakness speaking. Then why are your cubs dying? Jiwan's voice rose. Why are they dying across your entire empire, when all the medical scans show nothing wrong? Why are Rin and Kale healthier after one night with Nari than they've been in a month in your perfect automated nursery? Vekros had no answer. He looked at his cubs, playing at Nari's feet. I want proof, he said finally. Then bring me your eldest, Jiwan said. Someone who remembers the old stories. Before your warrior culture took over everything. 3 hours later, they brought her. The old Kraith was ancient. Her scales faded to pale gray, her movements slow. She had to be helped through the barrier by 2 attendants. But her eyes were sharp and clear. I am Elder Matriarch Scylla, she said in a voice like dry leaves. I was told you had questions about the old ways. Jiwan bowed respectfully. Elder, I've read your historical records. I've seen references to something called the Turning. What was it? What was it? The Turning. Scylla's eyes closed for a moment. A story we are not supposed to tell. Your cubs are dying, Nari said softly. All of them. If there's something in the old stories that could help, please. The elder looked at her, then at the cubs playing nearby. Something softened in her expression. She lowered herself carefully to the floor, settling with a sigh. 5,000 years ago, she began. The Kraith were not conquerors. We were explorers, traders, artists. We lived in great clan cities, hundreds of families together. Cubs were raised by the whole community. We were not weak, but we were not warriors. What changed? Vekros asked quietly. The Devourers came. Scylla's voice went darker. Another species, long extinct now. They saw our peaceful nature as weakness. They attacked, killed thousands. nearly destroyed our entire civilization. So we made a choice. We would never be weak again, never be victims again. We would become the apex predators, the strongest, the most feared. You changed your entire culture, Jiwan said. We did more than that. We changed how we raised our young. No more community care. No more softness. Every cub would be raised in isolation, learning strength and self-sufficiency from birth, depending on no one, trusting no one. Within 3 generations, we became what we needed to be, unstoppable warriors. And it worked, Vekros said. It did, Scylla agreed. We destroyed the Devourers. We conquered systems. We built an empire. We became exactly what we set out to be. So what's the problem? Vekros demanded. Scylla looked at him with something like pity. We forgot to stop. The war with the Devourers ended 4,000 years ago. But we kept raising our cubs in isolation, kept pushing for more strength, more hardness, less connection. Generation after generation. And slowly, very slowly, our cubs started dying. At first, just a few. Easy to ignore, but more every generation. Because you cannot train biology out of existence. You can only suppress it. And suppression has consequences. The cell was silent, except for the cubs' soft chirping as they played. The old ways kept us alive for millions of years, Scylla continued. The new ways made us strong for 5,000. But they are killing us. Look at your cubs, General. Look at how they thrive with this human girl who knows nothing of our empire, our strength, our pride. She simply holds them. And they live. Vekros looked at Rin and Kael. They had climbed onto Nari's lap and were fighting over her hand playfully, making happy sounds. So we made ourselves into predators, he said slowly, and in doing so, we are destroying ourselves. Yes, Scylla said. We became what we feared most. Not the Devourers, but extinct. Jiwan pulled up data on the terminal. I can prove it scientifically. Look at these hormone levels in isolated cubs versus these readings I just took from Rin and Kale. The difference is staggering. Physical contact, social bonding. It triggers biochemical responses their bodies need to develop properly. Without it, their systems shut down. Slowly, but inevitably. Vekros sat down heavily. The High Council will never accept this. They will call it weakness. Then they will watch their species die, Scylla said simply. The choice is yours, General. Pride or survival. You cannot have both. For 2 weeks, they kept it secret. Nari and Jiwan cared for Rin and Kael in the cell, while Vekros quietly brought other struggling cubs from across the ship. They placed them with other human prisoners. Carefully selected ones who were gentle and willing to help. The results were undeniable. Every cub, placed with a human caretaker, began to thrive. Every cub left in isolation continued to fail. But secrets on a warship never last long. Commander Thex found out on day 15. He burst into the detention level with a full security team, and what he saw made him go rigid with fury. Human prisoners walking freely in the corridors, Kraith cubs following them like pets. The enemy, caring for the children of warriors. Treason, Thex hissed. He had his weapon pointed at Nari before Vekros could stop him. You have betrayed everything we are. General. Everything we stand for. I have saved our cubs, Vekros said calmly. Look at them. Thex. Look at their health. I see weakness. I see our future warriors being corrupted by prey species. Thex activated his communicator. This is Commander Thex of the 4th Fleet. I am reporting a Code 7 violation. General Vekros has committed treason against the Kraith Empire. Send a High Council enforcement team immediately. Vekros's hand moved to his weapon, but he didn't draw it. I choose duty, honor, strength, Thex looked at him with something like regret. You were the greatest of us, General. Now you will die alongside these humans. The enforcement team arrived within hours. 10 elite warriors, answering only to the High Council. They took Vekros into custody. They seized all the cubs, pulling them away from the human caretakers. The cubs screamed and fought, but it made no difference. They were dragged back to the isolated nurseries. They came for Nari last. You are charged with sabotage, corruption of Kraith youth, and crimes against the Empire. The lead enforcer said. Sentence is death. To be carried out at dawn. They threw her in a different cell. This one had no bench, no water, nothing. Just bare metal walls and a solid door. She couldn't see out, couldn't hear anything except her own breathing. She thought about Hyun. About home. About how strange it was that she was going to die on an alien warship for the crime of taking care of children. The door opened at what must have been close to dawn. Nari stood up, ready to face it. But it wasn't an executioner. It was Vekros. How did you... She started. We don't have much time, he interrupted. He looked different. Tired. His uniform was torn. Thex has taken command of the ship. The High Council has ordered the execution of all humans and the return to traditional cub rearing. They call this entire situation a contamination. The cubs will die, Nari said. I know. Vekros's voice was rough. I tried to make them see. I showed them the data, the health improvements, everything. They don't care. To them, survival through weakness is worse than extinction through strength. So that's it? They'd rather die than change? Half of them, yes. Vekros looked at her intently. But half disagree. There are others like me across the fleet, across the Empire. Parents who have watched their cubs die. Warriors who see the truth. We are dividing. A civil war is coming. And what does that have to do with me? I am releasing all human prisoners, Vekros said. Transport ships are being prepared. You can go home. Back to your people. The war between us is ending, one way or another. Nari shook her head. What about Rin and Kale? Vekros looked away. They have been taken back to the nursery. Under guard. I cannot reach them. They'll die there. I know. So we get them out. Vekros stared at her. You are being offered freedom. Why would you risk that? Oh, because they're just babies, Nari said. And because someone has to prove that caring about them isn't weakness. It's strength. For a long moment, Vekros said nothing. Then he reached into his armor and pulled out a small device. The nursery is on deck 7. This access key will get you through one security door. After that, you will be on your own. You're coming with me. I cannot. I am already under surveillance. If I move toward the nursery, they will seal it completely. But you? You are just a human prisoner trying to escape. They won't expect you to go toward the cubs. They'll expect you to run for the transport ships. Nari took the access key. If I die doing this, you won't. I will create a distraction. You will have approximately 10 minutes. Vekros looked at her. And for the first time, she saw something like respect in his eyes. Save my children, Nari. Prove to the Empire that your way is not weakness. He left. The door stayed open. Nari ran. Deck 7 was chaos. Alarms blaring. Soldiers running everywhere. Something had exploded in the engine room. Vekros's distraction. She slipped through corridors, staying low, using every bit of stealth training she had learned. The nursery door was guarded by 2 warriors. Nari used the access key from a side panel. The door opened before the guards could react. She slipped inside and sealed it behind her. The nursery was a cold, sterile room full of small, isolated chambers. In each chamber, a cub lay alone. Reen and Kale were in separate chambers at the back. When they saw her, they started chirping desperately. I've got you, Nari whispered. She broke open their chambers using emergency releases. The cubs practically flew to her, wrapping around her, making panicked sounds. The door behind her exploded inward. Guards poured in. Nari grabbed the cubs and ran for the emergency vent shaft. Too small for Kraith adults. Just barely big enough for her. She made it inside with the cubs seconds before the guards reached her. They tried to follow but couldn't fit. She crawled through the dark maintenance shafts, following what she hoped was the path to the transport bay. She emerged in a loading dock and stopped. The entire Kraith fleet filled the view screen outside, but half the ships were turning away from the others, weapons charging. The civil war had begun. Nari! Jiwon's voice. She ran up with a group of other humans. Transport ship is this way. We have to go now. Come on, Nari said to the cubs. They followed her without hesitation. They boarded the transport with dozens of other freed prisoners. As the ship pulled away from the Kraith flagship, Nari watched through the window. The fleet was splitting, some ships following Vekros's banner, others staying loyal to the High Council. The first shots were being fired. What happens now? Jiwon asked softly. Nari looked down at Rin and Kale, curled up against her. Now we prove that caring for each other isn't weakness. We show both species that there's a better way. You think they'll listen? Some will, some won't. But these two? Nari stroked the cubs' heads. They'll grow up knowing both ways. Maybe they can build something new. The transport jumped to faster than light travel. Behind them, the Kraith Civil War erupted in full. Ahead, Earth waited, and in Nari's arms, two cubs who represented a very fragile hope slept peacefully, dreaming of a future where strength and compassion were not enemies, but allies. Years later, the history books would record this as the day the war ended, not through conquest or surrender, but through a simple truth that both species finally learned. The strongest warriors are not those who stand alone, but those who know when to let someone stand beside them. Rin and Kale grew up on Earth, raised by Nari and a community of both humans and reformed Kraith. They became the first ambassadors of a new age, and when they had cubs of their own, they raised them the old way, the real old way, with love, warmth, and the understanding that being held isn't weakness. It's how you learn to stand.